Verse 2 of Genesis. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. That's verse 2. There's a lot in there. But let's break this down, shall we? The number that is represented very blatantly in verse 1 is the number 2, and in verse 2 is the number 3. So we've got the earth was without form and void. There's 3 things represented there. Let's go to the second one. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. There's 3 things represented there. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. There's 3 things there. So we have 3 sentences with 3 things in the sentence. And we have 3 phases of existence. We start off with almost nothing, but maybe not quite nothing. The earth was without form and void. Then in the second, we have darkness was upon the Tehom, which is represents a formless water. The abyss, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll explain why that is like formless water, which would represent gas. And then the last one is liquid water, right? Almost nothing, maybe plasma. Perhaps the second thing is gas, and then the last is water. Interesting, isn't that? So that is 3. Let's begin with the first one. And the earth. Now notice that which is last in the first verse is first in the second verse. And that which is mentioned first among the 2, the second set of 2, which would be the heaven, isn't created until later. So it's the latter is mentioned first, and the last thing, and that which is first in the second verse is last in this one. First shall be last. Is that a coincidence, or is that a theme? Yes, it's a theme in Genesis, and it's a theme that is represented throughout the Bible. Just interesting. I'll throw that in there. So earth is without form and void. Now, if you think that God started with a ball planet, like a ball planet, and you're going to take it literally, you're only going to think of Earth as this ball planet, you cannot think of that and then also not take other things for granted. So you're either going to have to take that for granted and not take and start guessing on other things, or you have to think of this in terms of a general thing. All right, now I'll explain that later, right? Because, well, actually, right now, because Earth without form and void. Can you draw me a picture of Earth without form and void? Number 1, it can't be a ball because it has no form, and it's empty. So if it had water, if it's a ball planet with water, it's not empty. Well, then you have to assume that, well, it's meaning it's empty of life. And you'd be correct. However, it doesn't say it's empty of life. It just says it's completely empty, 100%. So you're saying that I am to assume that it's talking about life, even though it doesn't mention life at all. Or it's saying that the Eretz, whatever the Eretz represents, which I don't think is a ball planet, is without form and void. I think it's matter energy. Now, let's talk about this. Matter energy without form and void. What would that look like? Well, what would without form be? Would that be volumeless? Without volume? And void, empty, would that be without mass? So we're talking about something that is without mass and without volume. It's saying that matter energy is without volume and mass. And that would be consistent with the understanding and the guesses currently proposed by scientists, their theory. Now, I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying it's consistent with what this is talking about, or could be talking about. All right? It's very vague. I mean, it's clear to me, but You either have to make assumptions over there, or you're going to make assumptions over here. So that's the first line. Second one, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. That may be the most mysterious verse in the entire Bible. What is the darkness? You say, well, that's obvious. The darkness is the absence of light. And you would be correct. There was no light at this time. But why would we talk about something that is non-existent being upon something that is perhaps existing? So the absence of something was upon something that we don't know what it is, the Tehom, the abyss. If you look that up in the Strongs, it's the measureless space. But let's not get that far yet. Darkness was upon the face. What is the face? Alpani is the Hebrew word, and if you look that up in the Strongs, it's the part which turns, or it's an opening that starts with the word pei, the letter pei, which is represents a mouth in Hebrew, and it's not really certain what beni is, even though it's mentioned twice, but it's like the opening or the beginning of, the entrance point. The entrance point, okay? That's what I think about it. And that word is also used, I saw that word on a sign that was by a lake in Hebrew. It was a word in Hebrew, al-bani. It's also a name of a town nearby. I wonder, is there a connection? Anyway, it's on the face of the deep. Tehom, you look that up, it's measureless space. Now, if we go with that word, measureless space, is it measureless because it's so big, or is it measureless because it's so small you can't measure it? And I submit to you, it's probably the latter, and the reason why is because the expansion has not happened yet. So it's describing something that is probably very small, or not expanded at the very least. So darkness was holding back the entrance point of that measureless space, or that which cannot be measured. Another way of looking at that word tehom is it's the same Hebrew word that is describing earth, aretz, tohu, without form. The only difference is it has a mem, letter mem at the end, which represents water, or specifically waves of water. If you look at the ancient Hebrew, it's waves of water. So it's either measureless water or it's measureless wave. And both of those work for me. Measureless water is gas, and measureless wave, well, what could that be? A measureless wave. I'll get back to that. Okay? Or, I'm sorry, formless wave. Formless wave. A wave without form. Not formed yet. Okay. And we know all of the existence, or we pretty sure we think that everything, the fundamentals of everything is a wave. Whether it's quantum field theory, waves, or it's string theory, a little string that vibrates into waves, into everything we know to exist. That's the best we know so far. Lastly, last part of verse 2 is the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Moropet, the Spirit of God, Roch Elohim. It's the only time the word Roch is used. Pretty sure about that in Genesis 1. Spirit. Unless it's used as the breath of life? No, probably not. Anyway, moved, marokpet, is the word for moved. It is the idea of hovering upon or vibrating or moving. The English translation, at least in the King James Bible, is moving upon. So it kind of has the idea of existing and also an action. Either one of those work for me. Not going to debate one way or the other. And then he moves upon the face of the waters. Again, the entrance point, that which turns, the opening, that's the face, al-pani, and waters, mayim. Okay, so in the beginning you have that which is almost nothing, but not quite nothing. The earth was without form and void, almost nothing. I don't know how you would describe nothing other than saying that. Or something that seems like nothing. And then the next thing, tehom, whatever that means, measureless space, or gaseous, a gas, and then you've got mayim. That wraps up 3. The 3, verse 2, which is 3 of 3, 3, 3, a bunch of 3s. Okay? I think that sums that up. And I'm pretty wired, not sure why. Coffee may not have anything to do with it, or everything to do with it. Hopefully you kept up with me. If you have any questions, or if you inevitably are going to argue with me, go ahead and put it in the comments. I will read them and probably respond. Okay, bye.